Greetings, GameCola faithful, and welcome to the GameCola Podcast. This is podcast number 125, and I am your host and podcast commander, Joseph Martin.
And I am your friendly neighborhood, John Rizzi. I am a video creator here for GameCola.
And I'm Dan Conlin. I am here too.
I think you need maybe a little bit more of an introduction. Dan is a new addition to the staff. He's written a couple of very good articles that you can find on our actual internet website, GameCola.net, and you can read them there. You also have a playthrough in the works in the sense that you've made it, and I just need to approve it and upload it at some point, which may be done by the time this podcast comes out. We're recording a little bit earlier in the month than we usually do. So if we seem extra untimely, because, you know, the GameCola Podcast is known for how timely of a production it is. That is why. But yeah, how's everybody doing tonight?
Doing good. How you doing?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the crowd, and it's the audience going, yeah, we're doing great.
We're kind of sweaty, all right.
So... This is a gaming news and discussion podcast, so we're gonna, how about some gaming news? Mostly new releases. We're in the at the tail end of the summer drought, so we're like right where some of the big name releases are starting to come out, and we're also where a lot of new games are being announced for the fall opposite of a drought, the fall storm, the fall tsunami, the fall
deluge,
like big storm, but not like a natural disaster. Big would probably be the area of metaphor I want to inhabit.
I mean, I just came out of a hurricane, so
yeah, we're all safe. This is recorded after the hurricane. We're all safe. I hope you are too. But yeah, so let's start. First thing, I promised Anna and James I would talk about the sequel to Valhalla. It was announced, and I need to find where we wrote down the name. It's because, you know, Valhalla has the name where it's like Val like 1A Hall A or something.
I got it here.
It spells
the Norse
Valhalla.
spelling, yeah.
N1RV Ann-A. Nirvana.
Right. So it's a sequel. There's not a whole lot of details about it yet, but it is also a bartending game in Anna seemed pretty confident that it was in the same universe. It may or may not be like a direct narrative sequel. It may just be like this is a game that takes place in the same narrative universe, and there'll be like references, but not necessarily like intertwined plots. We don't know that much about it, but that is coming out. That has been announced. I don't know if it's been. Did the website that they linked give a release date?
Now, could you be so kind as to explain to a poor old sap like me what this series is? Because from what I gather, you said it takes place in a bar, so right now I'm thinking Tapper, but in Norse mythology.
Visual novel, like.
Ah.
But you're not entirely wrong. The game takes place in a sort of cyberpunk future where, you know, you've got people with like technological modifications. You know, some people have like cat ears, stuff like that.
Of course.
But then also like more like mechanical stuff too, I think. And in Valhalla specifically, I know you play as a bartender in a sort of like seedy alleyway bar. It's sort of like there's definitely elements of visual novel in it, in that a lot of it is talking to the customer. So it's sort of like this, at least in the early game, it's this balance of talking to a customer, and, you know, your character is like it's not just you play a character who has like a specific personality too, but you are interspersed with talking to these customers and sort of learning about the world and everything. You are also pouring drinks to their specifications. So like, it's like, give me something this. And so you have to, you know, click, you know, it says like you're mixing drinks basically.
Okay.
Yeah. So you're mixing drinks and also interacting with this pretty narrative heavy game. I don't think it's the same people, but it is a very similar aesthetic style to, what was the name of it? It was a murder mystery, and you had a little robot character.
I don't know, but that sounds amazing.
2064 read-only memories.
All right.
That game. I think there's some references in between, but I don't think it's made by the same people. So if you're into that, that's the thing that's happening.
Woo!
Other news, there was a Nintendo Direct. We used to like cover the big Nintendo Directs, but they're like all big now.
Even the smaller ones.
Instead of like having one big one where they announce like a bunch of games, they've just been announcing 1 or 2 games in every Direct. So we won't go into full details, but I think the big ones were
Ports.
Luigi's.
Ports everywhere.
Well, there was no. Well, yes, that's why those were the ones I was going to ignore. There are a lot of ports, but the big ones were Luigi's Mansion 3 and Animal Crossing for the Switch.
Hey, we all knew that was coming.
Everybody knew that it was probably going to happen eventually, but it's nice to see the 2019 date on it.
I'm still holding out for F-Zero.
They've brought back everything else, so like, at this rate.
Everything is on Switch except for Final Fantasy VIII.
So
Dude,
can someone...
Even Nintendo knew how hated Final Fantasy VIII was with the main fans.
I never even knew that people didn't like Final Fantasy VIII. I knew
it was
people
just at the time though. Like people like it now.
Oh, okay.
It's like same thing with like Zelda Wind Waker and FF12.
I was gonna say like every Zelda game before Breath of the Wild. Everyone hated it when it came out.
Like the opposite of Sonic games, where at first they're like, "This is amazing," and then later like, "Wait, no."
Wait, we need to actually finish the game.
I don't know. Hey, you don't have to. I loved Sonic Adventure 2, and I just played that first Shadow level over and over again, and it was a very good game. I loved it. I had a lot of fun.
Well, I could listen to City Escape over any unfinished level, so it doesn't matter. That can just make anything amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So that's it. I'm sure we'll hear more about Animal Crossing from the GameCola podcast in the future, but right now there's not a whole lot to go off of aside from it's coming. It was just I don't even think it was an official title screen. It was just like the Animal Crossing logo and the number 2019 below it.
Yeah, it almost seemed like an afterthought at the end of the Direct.
It's one of those things, I think it was kind of like with when they announced Let's Go, Pikachu and Eevee, and like they had to say like, by the way, we're also working on like the next Pokemon like sequel, which I don't think they would have mentioned it were it not for the concern that people had forgotten it, because Isabelle, the one of the Animal Crossing characters, was also confirmed to be a character in Smash Brothers. And so I think it was sort of like, well, we have to say that we're actually working on Animal Crossing, because otherwise people are going to be really disappointed that it's just Isabelle's in Smash. So I think maybe they sort of had their hands tied and probably wouldn't have talked about it this early had that not been the situation.
That makes sense.
But yeah, so that's that. Now the other really big release that you've probably heard about this month is everyone's favorite superhero, Arachnid Guy, got a video game.
Ant-Man.
Ant-Man. Everyone's favorite more than 4-limbed superhero. No, Spider-Man. Spider-Man on PS4, an exclusive.
Yes.
Marvel's, as opposed to the other Spider-Mans.
No, there's just so many games just titled...
Excuse me, it's Spider-Man. Thank you.
Spider-Man.
There's so many games just titled Spider-Man. This one, I think the official title for this one is Marvel's Spider-Man.
Mm.
So
I've only heard people talking about it as Spider-Man, the PS4 Spider-Man game. Yeah. But it's had incredible critical acclaim.
Yes, for very good reason. I believe I'm the only one here that's played it for right now on the cast.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Yeah, my time to shine. No pressure or anything. For people that don't know me, I am a huge lifelong Spider-Man fan. Like I saw the first movie in theaters in 2002. I was very young at the time, and I don't know, fell in love with it. I know like so many interpretations. I've seen plenty of the shows, all the good ones, some of the really bad ones, and whatnot. And this game is amazing. I love the most impressive part about this game is the storytelling. Because it takes notes from like the new Tomb Raider games, Uncharted and whatnot, where the gameplay is linked to the cutscenes. It's all the cutscenes are in engine, so it seamlessly transitions into the gameplay. So I believe the they're officially the opening scene. There's plenty of videos on YouTube about it. But the transitions from gameplay to the cutscenes and vice versa really make this game very engaging. I didn't want to put it down, not just because I'm a fan, but because the storytelling was so solid. I immediately wanted to know, oh crap, what's the next level going to do? What's the next mission? What's going to happen to Aunt May? What's going to happen to MJ, etc., etc. Very fun. It takes a lot of notes from the Batman Arkham series, if you guys are familiar with that.
Mm-hmm.
But it adds a flair where in the Batman Arkham games you feel like Batman. You're heavy, you're somewhat slow, but you can also move really fast through the air and whatnot. Spider-Man, of course, is not like Batman. So it takes the gameplay from the Arkham series and makes it faster and more. You feel more agile. You feel like you can dodge 5,000 bullets at once. You can take out 3 guys in one swing. You can web objects in the background, say a crane or whatnot. You web down the hook that's attached to it, knock down the 3 guys that just happen to be standing under it. So much environmental stuff, and the open world is super detailed. There's from big details to big landmarks like the Empire State Building, or references to other Marvel characters like Avengers Tower and whatnot. And there's the little details the rocket launchers. If you zoom in with the game's excellent photo mode, you could see there's writing on the missiles that say guaranteed to kill spiders. So it's little details like that this game is made by Insomniac Studios, which is the studio responsible for Ratchet and Clank and
Spyro
and Sunset Overdrive for the Xbox One. Yes.
Important to note, not the Arkham series, because
yes.
I think it's important to point out that the similarity is not one because, they just, they made this superhero video game and so they use that to inform their superhero video game. This is something that I think it's important to notice, that this is a trend. This makes it more of a trend now, right?
Yes.
Instead of there is a series of games, and it'll be interesting to see if how this style of gameplay is developed, because right now it is Batman Arkham games is the way you described it.
Yes.
Sort of. Are we going to have a certain situation where this is a term like Metroidvania, where it's a genre of game defined by its original defining games, or are people going to come up with a title that's more descriptive, probably not this, because it's a little bit more specific, but platformer, first-person shooter, stuff like that.
I could definitely see it becoming more of a Metroidvania type thing.
Yeah, because it's been considered Arkham style for years now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I figure at this point, I can't really see the name changing much. I mean, it's certainly possible, but the way it is now.
Are there other high-profile games, aside from, obviously, the Arkham ones, that fall into the Arkham style, though?
I would kind of put maybe the new Tomb Raider games in that style, but it also has a lot of narrative stuff that the Arkham games hasn't done. Probably Horizon Zero Dawn, I would say, it has a feel to it. It's not. I'm not saying it's a carbon copy or that exact type of game, but it feels a lot like it.
I think it also depends on how you define the Arkham style, because for me personally, it's the combination of the open world traversal and the battle system, or the fighting mechanics.
Yes, because I believe when Arkham Asylum came out, everyone called it a 3D Metroidvania.
Huh.
Really?
That's pretty cool, actually.
Yes.
That's an interesting
kind of makes sense too.
Yeah, because you're in this enclosed environment and you can literally walk around the asylum at any time. You're free roam. You have free roam throughout.
Mm-hmm.
That was more before it was
Yeah.
I guess it was more before it was open. It was open world in the sense that you could, go places,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't open world in the sense that Spider-Man is, where it's a city and you can there's no ceiling, so you can go anywhere. Whereas the first game, I imagine, was in more of an enclosed environment where you had to take specific paths to get places.
Yes, very true. Also, for the record, I'd like to point out that Batman Arkham Asylum took the counter dodge system from Spider-Man 2 the game, so I like to think that series has gone full circle with these two going back and forth.
Yeah.
But honestly, though, the game that I would feel like is more of a carbon copy of the Arkham games is the Amazing Spider-Man game from 2012, based on that movie.
You like it that much, huh?
No. No, that is the definition of a mediocre game. Oh God, no. The sequel was 5 times.
Amazing Spider-Man.
The sequel was 1,000 times worse, but oh my, I don't want to get into that right now. But yeah, no, that game that honestly felt like Batman. It like you were Spider-Man, of course, but you felt heavy. You didn't feel as agile. Yes, he did like agile things, but you didn't feel like you controlled it. It just felt like I hit the counter button. He did like 5 flips. I'm like in Spider-Man PS4, you pretty much control like what he does it feels like you're doing it manually. Like any tricks or agile things you feel like you're doing it manually. Like the dodge system, like if you just dodge someone's fist, you'd be like, whoop, incoming, and then you hit the counter button right after. It's like it feels seamless. But if you hit the dodge button at the perfect time, it goes in the slow-mo and if you hit the counter button at the same time, he'll like web them up and like in the slow-mo, and it feels like you have full control over what you're doing at all times.
Because I know one of the criticisms of Arkham style games is like, what was this? I had the term in my head. It's like that thing like when you're fighting and the game like just sort of slides you around enemies. So like basically like you're pressing buttons to like punch and kick, and the game is just like you're not like moving the analog stick or anything. The game is just moving you from enemy to enemy, so it's basically like you're like Batman and you're just punching the air, and the game is just like putting you in front of bad guys as you're punching.
Oh yeah.
Is that sort of mitigated in this, or is that sort of the same thing?
If you want to dodge in a certain direction, you have to push the analog stick in that certain direction. And this game has so many enemies like coming at you at once, so you have to really think about like, okay, do I want to dodge to the right? If I do, I'm gonna have to dodge enemies 4, 5, and 6. But if I would dodge to the left, I only have to dodge another one, or I can easily counter the guy I'm dodging right now. So it's like looking at it, it doesn't look like strategy. It just looks very fluid. But while you're playing it, you're like, okay, I have to go here, web that guy. I punch that guy in the face, throw that guy off the building. Don't worry, he's not gonna die. It's yeah, literally every time you throw an enemy off a building in this game, which is something I always like to do in a Spider-Man game, even though it breaks character. But when you throw an enemy off a building, no matter like how you do it, he always just gets webbed to the nearest wall. It's like a web just comes out of him and he gets hooked up to the wall. Like if the fall isn't gonna kill him, the web dissolving after like an hour will probably kill him.
So no more pile drivers off the Empire State Building like in Spider-Man 2.
No, unfortunately,
no.
I guess some small nitpicks I have is that there's no fall damage. So like I can jump off the Empire State Building, land on the street below, and the most that would happen is that Spider-Man would land and the street would crack. but he would be fine. And you can't go to Liberty or Ellis Island, which I thought they would do, but no. Keeping up the tradition where the only Spider-Man game you can do that is Spider-Man 2.
Well, there's always DLC.
Oh no.
Yeah, and sequel.
Yes, it makes me really wonder what they're going to do with the sequel. Probably add subways and obviously like probably the sewer system if they're going to go the lizard route again. But yeah.
Here's my pitch.
Yes.
The DL sequel.
No.
Isn't that what Saints Row 4 did?
Probably. I was thinking about something, because when you were talking about like other games that are sort of like Arkham style, you mentioned Horizon Zero Dawn, and I'm not sure I agree with that. Not as like a, not as like a how dare you put that in that category. Just like from what I've seen of Horizon Zero Dawn, one of the biggest things that I would say separates it is that the game is super focused on resource collection and crafting to a fault, I would say.
Yeah.
There's stuff everywhere.
I hesitated when I mentioned Horizon Zero Dawn.
Okay.
I was thinking like in terms of combat and like and open world exploration, but like the game I would compare mostly to Horizon Zero Dawn would be like Breath of the Wild. But that would be
really interesting
one.
Because I was playing Breath of the Wild at the same time I was watching a friend play Horizon Zero Dawn, and it was very interesting to me. I think I've talked about it a little bit on the podcast before, but it was very interesting to me the parallels of how things worked Like, because in both games you're exploring an open world and you're like collecting resources and crafting them. But I would say the biggest difference was that in Horizon Zero Dawn, there's so much stuff, and Zelda, even though you're collecting a lot of stuff, it's a lot more streamlined, and I feel like there's a lot less garbage. There's still garbage. There's still like a bunch of items where it's like, I've had these and I have 20 of them and I've never used a single one. But I feel like I was only near the end of the game before I started like filling up and like needing to clear space in my inventory, and I didn't have that big of an inventory. Like, you don't have that much space in your inventory, whereas in Horizon Zero Dawn, like, even at the very beginning of the game, you're constantly like, you can only carry 20 of this thing.
That bugged me in it, yeah.
So that was one of the things. What was the other game that you said? I forget.
The Tomb Raider games.
Right. I had an opinion about that too,
yeah.
But all I remembered was that I had an opinion about the other game that you said. Because I've always heard Tomb Raider games compared more to, like the Nathan Drake.
Yeah, Uncharted.
Uncharted. That one.
I compared it to Tomb Raider in more of the collectathon on an open world and stealth missions, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah. Because
Because that one, the combat's very gun, right?
Yeah, it's very run and gun.
Yeah, because I think even at the beginning, you start with like a bow and arrow, and then you get guns from the enemies, which is not really I feel like the whole point of like the Batman and Spider-Man, this Arkham style, as it were, is like it's very focused on punching, like close combat, running up to people, punching and dodging, rather than like the sort of cover based systems of like, Uncharted and Tomb Raider. And there's no, you don't have, I mean, I guess you do have like, you can shoot people with web, but like I feel like the only ranged, maybe this isn't correct, but it seems to me like the only ranged stuff that you would do in Spider-Man would just be to instigate a conflict. Sort of like the equivalent of hitting an enemy with a hammer in Paper Mario, and that gives you a free hit at the beginning of the battle. Sort of like that, where like it can give you like a momentary advantage at the beginning, but like you can't fight an entire combat encounter at range, it feels like, in that style.
Even though I still haven't played Spider-Man, there is another parallel, as flimsy as it is, to Tomb Raider, where you can sort of start off each encounter, or most encounters, with a stealth thing. You can sort of take out a few of them, thin their numbers a little bit before taking on a few more than one person at once. And like that's something that like Uncharted didn't do, at least not until 4. But like I know Spider-Man has that, and I mean I figure we're drawing parallels to Tomb Raider. And I know like the stealth mechanics in Spider-Man are bare bones from what I hear, but they get the job done.
Yeah, I was gonna say the stealth in Spider-Man PS4, like it's another thing I kind of complain about because it's fun. It's like it's decent stealth missions, but there's not a lot of variety, so they just get really redundant after a while. Actually, another game I would compare is most like Arkham style is, I'm not sure if you played it, but there was a Mad Max game that came out not too long ago.
I have it in my Steam library. Still haven't played it yet, though.
Yeah, that game is very Arkham style. Big open world, close quarters combat, counter dodge system that is very Arkham-like, and also has a lot of resource collecting, like Tomb Raider and Horizon and whatnot. So a lot of the same games coming out lately.
I guess it's not that resource collecting, and I'm evolving my opinion as we talk about this. But I guess like it's not that resource collecting is like, oh, if there's tons of like resource collecting like Breath of the Wild, Horizon Zero Dawn, it's not Arkham style. But I feel like it really needs to have that like close quarters physical combat style primarily. Maybe even like not using weapons, or not using like a specific, like, not no weapons, right? Because like Batman and Spider-Man have like gadgets and stuff.
Yes, they do.
But I mean like not fighting with a sword or an axe. Like I feel like God of War probably wouldn't fall into this because like but I don't know. Like maybe that is similar because you are fighting close combat, and just because someone's holding a thing in their hands, does that make it no longer? But I feel like it, and part of it is like not necessarily like a strict definition to result, but more like what are the qualities of a game that will make consumers say, hey, this is a lot like Batman Arkham, because that's what happened with Spider-Man. It's like that's the main thing. People say that, and
that's both like a common thing. Like a lot of gamers like to point that out with other games, but I think it's mostly a conception of the Marvel versus DC fan backlash that like a lot of people like to do, comparisons that a lot of people like to do. But again, it's like Marvel and DC have been going at it since their conception. So to compare these two, it is fair. It is a fair comparison since they're both practically the same kind of company. But again, they all have their own things. Like let's say like DC is about the heroes in DC are about gods becoming human, with say for Batman, while Marvel is about humans becoming gods, say for except for Thor or someone like that. But yeah, no, like every superhero has their own thing. I'm sure if they made a Superman game now, obviously they would probably have like some kind of counter dodge system, but let's say like a twist on it would be like in the air. So it would feel like a close quarters combat system. But say like you're in the air, you're fighting like people that are flying like 3 miles away, but you're still, I don't know. I'm just spitballing here for right now.
That's the problem with flying, is that once one person can fly, everybody has to be able to fly. Because like imagine any situation where you have a fight where one person can fly and the other person can't. Like,
no contest.
There's no, like, the other person can always leave. Like, that's the thing. Like, as soon as you start to lose, it's like, cool, I'm out. Like, I don't need to be here anymore if I'm losing. And I'm still, I mean, you know, the perpetual high ground. So like, that would be my concern.
I have the really high ground.
Yes. I'm going to punch you from all the way up here. But yeah, it's like, that would be my concern with like trying to bring it to Superman, is that like you're gonna have every single enemy be able to fly, because that's the only way that this is gonna work. Because like the thing with Spider-Man is kind of like, while he's swinging around, like, you know, his 1 to 3 limbs are occupied with that particular task, so you can't really be doing much fighting while you're doing the movement that the bad guys don't have. Whereas opposed to someone who can just be like, I'm going up now. I'm gonna not be down anymore. And you're just gonna have to deal with that.
There was a Spider-Man game, Spider-Man Web of Shadows, that came out in 2008, I believe, where you can literally do a swinging kick, and you can do it in this game, but it's not as powerful. But the swinging kick in Web of Shadows was literally like, I see a cluster of enemies right down there to complete this crime event. I literally just swing down, get them all with one swinging kick, and just continue swinging the way I was. Here, you can only swing kick one enemy at a time, but you can't do it while you regular swinging. You have to hit the combat button while you're in the air to do it. But yeah, it's not the same like in and out combat system as Web of Shadows was, which is a very fast paced game, and that gameplay I really like, but I will be the first to admit it's very redundant and it gets really old really fast. But it is fun. Let's see what else. Oh yes, the web swinging in Spider-Man PS4. It's momentum based. A lot of people have been claiming for that since Spider-Man 2, which personally I find when Spider-Man 2 the game came out, I really wanted to play it, but I only had a PC. And if you know anything about the PC version of Spider-Man 2 the game, it was not marketed at all to be the same exact game as the console version. Instead, it was a dumbed down like kids game.
I think, is that the one where it has like the Stan Lee tutorials where it's like,
no.
press the W button to walk forward. Tutorial complete.
It wasn't Stan Lee, it was Bruce Campbell's voice. But yeah, no, it's like the web swing in that game, you could only web swing to these web icons that were strewn throughout the city. I was so disappointed as a kid. So yeah, I never played the real Spider-Man 2 the game until it was after I played Web of Shadows, so I would say like 2009-ish. But yeah, no, I personally find the web swing in Spider-Man 2 the game, it's addicting, it's fun to travel around, and especially to catch up speed and whatnot, but it's still very clunky in terms of like traversal and animations and whatnot. So when everyone says, oh, I wish it was like Spider-Man 2, it's like, No, you don't. You wish it was better than Spider-Man 2, but look better. Because if you look back at it now, it's still fun, but I don't think it's aged well compared to games like the web swinging in Web of Shadows or Ultimate Spider-Man, or wow, there's a lot of Spider-Man games. But yeah, no, I personally think Web of Shadows has the best web swinging, but that game is such a mess, like overall, that it kind of takes away from that. As long as it's not like Spider-Man 3, I'm perfectly happy with. But yeah, and Spider-Man PS4, it seems slow at first, but you pick up speed over time, and it's weird because the game has a fast travel option where you can literally ride the subway to get where you have, and has a little cute loading screen of Spider-Man riding the subway, interacting with people on the train car.
I saw that. I love that.
It's adorable, but it's still kind of redundant because, like, I feel like this game shouldn't need to have a fast travel option because I know there's some people that don't have a lot of patience, but web swinging is so much fun in this game that you would rarely use it. And I have my roommates that literally all they do is just web swing around. They even like ignore the crimes and people screaming for help right below them. They're just like, I'm having too much fun doing swan dives off of Avengers Tower and whatnot.
I've seen a couple of clips of people like going through certain like side story missions, and so like while they're doing it, they're like obviously they're trying to do it as fast as possible, so they only go like event to event, and as they're going, you just hear people like, "Help! Someone!" You see like 3 different instances. They're like, I guess that's not the priority right now.
Wow, that car crash looks nasty.
Whee!
So yeah, you were talking about how like just moving around in the game is fun, because that reminds me a lot of Mario Odyssey, where like one time I was like just showing someone like the game and like this is what the game is like, and this is like what you would be doing playing it, and I have ended up just sort of like after that I was done showing it to them, I was just like running around the first real world, just sort of like jumping around and like just going to different places because it's just so fun to move in that game. And if you can make your game fun to just do, like not even like complete the challenges, and I mean I'm not saying that like every game needs to be like this, because like that obviously that won't work in like a tactics game, right? Like the tactics game is selecting squares, and there's only so good you can make selecting squares feel. But, like, if you can get a game to feel good to just do without any objective being given to you, that will carry you very far. And you might not even necessarily, like, you can say, like, maybe the encounters and the engagement of, like, specific, like, on paper might be like, this looks kind of boring. I'm beating up a criminal for the 1500th time. But because just moving around in the game is fun, it doesn't matter that part is repetitive, because you you might reverse the dynamic of getting from place to place. You're instead of traveling from interesting point to interesting point, you could end up with a situation where what is it that they say? It's not the journey. It's not the destination. It's the journey.
It's journey. Yeah, yeah. I feel like Spider-Man really emphasizes that to a fault. Yeah, because like I said, my roommates play it all the time, but I'm just like, wait, you missed that important side quest, or like, oh, there's a little backpack you can collect. Wait, no, and like I have to think, oh crap, now I have to go back over there and whatnot. But yeah, traveling is so much fun, and the world. It's pretty much just Manhattan, except for like whatever's north of 32nd Street, above Harlem, because apparently that just doesn't exist in the Marvel world. It's literally just water where that is. But if you know New York at all, one time I was just swinging around and I was just like, I wonder if they have like the Ghostbusters building here. And sure enough, I go to the exact place in New York where it is. I see the building. I was like, oh, that's cute. And then I walk around to the back and I see a third party like drawing of Slimer on the back. I'm like, oh, that's so good. I'm like, I love it. And the bull that's on Wall, there's a golden bull statue on Wall Street. And it was replaced in this game. It's replaced with a golden statue of Lockjaw from the Inhumans comic book series. Like little details like that, I just love. I love that stuff so much. There's obviously a lot of parts of New York where they get wrong, like the Brooklyn Bridge area is so wrong. World Trade Center area is wrong, but Oh god, the game's so much fun. It's like it can't do everything, right? Right.
I've only been to New York a few times, but even watching like a trailer or something or like a gameplay video, I actually saw a place that I recognized there, like a little circular area by Central Park where I picked up an Uber.
Mm.
Yeah. I was like, hey, yeah.
New York is probably one of the most video game. I wonder, like, I'm sure, like, if you had the time, you could do like some sort of like meta analysis of like every single representation of New York over the years, because I feel like of all the cities, that is the one that has been most recreated in video games.
Absolutely. But one thing I would like, I think this is probably like the most accurate representation, like architectural wise, because in previous games, like especially like previous Spider-Man games, each building was literally like a block. It's like, okay, there's building here, building here. Let's just recreate the streets and whatnot, not care about the buildings. In this game, every building has their own unique shape and their own unique structure. Like there's not like in say like in Web of Shadows, like literally the same block would have the like eight like lock of the same locksmith companies. In this game, in Spider-Man PS4, no two areas look alike, despite it being a city, and I find that like super impressive. Like, and if I like, and there's a lot going on too. Like the pedestrians, if you like swing down, the pedestrians will either react like, "Hey, Spider-Man, looking good," and whatnot, and like some will come up to you. If you hit triangle, you can like give them a high five, shake their hand, and whatnot. If you go to the Harlem area, and there's like a bunch of basketball courts, you see a bunch of NPCs just playing a game of basketball. Oh, and you can just watch them. I haven't tried to get in their way yet. I'll probably go back and do it and see what happens. There's so much going on in this game. Like even there's like crime events going on that aren't on your map. Like I would just swing into an area and be like, oh my god, there was a car accident here, but the cops are already there, so the situation would already be handled. And I went back to that same area later, and it was completely fine. So there's random events that generate within the city where you can just the city is constantly changing, is what I'm saying. It just makes me. It's just so impressive the attention to detail Insomniac had for this game, and all the love they've had for the character just shows.
So what you're saying, in summation, is that Spider-Man for PS4 is a very good video game.
Yes, it is a very good video game that warms my heart and is my favorite Spider-Man game to date.
Would you say it is spectacular?
Amazing, spectacular, sensational, the ultimate Spider-Man game.
Marvelous.
And that's pushing it.
I think we've quite covered Spider-Man. Thank you, John. That was very in-depth. So you can check out Spider-Man on PS4. It's probably like, was it $60?
Yes. $60 full retail price. I don't know. What? How long does it take before I would recommend getting it at full price. They give you a lot of bang for your buck. But I will say it is easy to 100% the game. I
mean, yeah, it's like any game where it's like you could recommend getting it at full price is not if you see it for less, don't buy it. John said full price, and it's $55, so I can't buy it, because he said it's only worth it if you get it at full price.
No, I didn't say it's only worth it. I said it is worth it. If it's on sale, then by all means, you better get that.
I don't know how long it takes games. As digital distribution becomes bigger and bigger, like, the idea of a used games market becomes less and less of a factor, because I feel like that's why most games prices would go down over the years, is because like to basically compete with resales of the game. So like saying like, so it's not, instead of, oh, I could pay $20 for a used copy or $60 for a new copy, it's, oh, I could pay $20 for a used copy or $30 for a new copy. Whereas if you're selling a used game like immediately after a game comes out, it's like, well, this isn't going to be... Because the idea is that the person, like, got their worth out of it, and then that's why the cost went down. But if you just buy a game, no one's going to just buy a game and then sell it back for less.
Yeah.
So, I think because of that, I think it takes longer. Because I've definitely seen games where it's like, these games are, like, 3 years old, and they're still full price, or maybe $10 off. And the only reason that the prices would go down would be if the game just didn't sell well initially, even.
It also depends on rarity of the game, how many were produced, because I know Nintendo likes to keep their games like limited to a certain number of units. That's why,
right. But again, with digital distribution, like there's no limit. Like as many people can, like yes, if you want a physical copy, there's limited of that. But because there's so many people getting digital, that those shorted now there. Is there a lot of other physical media that Nintendo produces that is very often not in stock? Amiibos, yes.
I just want
mostly
Shulk,
by design. But like yes, in general. So like yeah, like hardware and stuff, like absolutely. Though I don't remember actually, but I feel like the Switch was pretty like demand was met pretty much. Right, because they released it in an off time.
Yeah.
So that they had instead of one time like the Wii was a disaster. I remember that.
Yeah, that was a painful process.
Because it came out like in the Christmas season, and so it was you just couldn't get it. I mean, I know that was one of the main reasons we didn't get a Wii for an entire year. We didn't want to deal with the hassle of trying to find one, and by the time a year went by, it wasn't that hard. It wasn't as hard to get one.
Yeah, I remember when Super Smash Bros. For Wii U came out, you couldn't find a GameCube adapter anywhere. But lo and behold, a year later, I found one at my local GameStop, $20, and I bought that immediately, and now I'm seeing them everywhere. Same. I had a similar thing when Majora's Mask 3D came out because only my local stores I think only got like 4 copies like opening day because some people two people per store like pre-ordered it and then they got 2 to just sell. Luckily I got there early and I managed to get my hands on one. But oh my god, I cannot imagine the supply and demand process for that. Even like used games at GameStop right now. Like I think like Kirby's Return to Dreamland for the Wii is still like $50, like a used copy of that, along with like the original Xenoblade and other Nintendo exclusive Wii games, except for Metroid Other M. That's still $8.
That's such a tough time getting Xenoblade a few years ago. I had to like search within like 15-20 miles for all the GameStops around just to find one of them that had it in stock used for $60. Yeah.
Yeah, because back then Xenoblade didn't have the because I think it was with that game where it sort of entered the American mainstream a lot more. I mean, especially ever since shulking it up in Smash, like that's a big signal boost to anything. But like I feel like that was around the time where the upswing on Xenoblade was just beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Similar thing, like I would say that like one of the biggest reasons that Fire Emblem had a big upswing was because it was when the 3DS came out and Nintendo dropped the price pretty early on in the system's life. To make it up to the people who bought it early, they've released several games on their virtual console. Like you got 20 free games from the virtual console that included NES games and Game Boy Advance games.
Yeah.
And one of the Game Boy Advance games was the Fire Emblem Game Boy Advance game. And I am like reasonably sure that is why the series has gotten a lot more attention in recent years. Like there's always been a cult following, but like they've been in Smash Brothers. Melee came out long before the 3DS did, but I feel like people got into the series. I feel like that got a lot of people into the series.
Yeah, because even like after like they appeared in Melee and Brawl, like I believe the Fire Emblem game for Wii is still incredibly hard and really expensive to find. But Fire Emblem Awakening and all the 3DS ones are a dime a dozen, I would say right now. But because there's that many units of them, yeah, I would agree with that. Because the 3DS was really popular when it came out, and a lot of people bought it at full price, and Nintendo's like, oops, well, you shouldn't have done that for full price if we're lowering the price this early, so they gave them all the free games. And that's a lot of people playing the Game Boy Advance Fire Emblem game. I played it when I got it. Yeah, I liked it a lot, but it's not my favorite kind of gameplay, so I didn't get into the rest of the series personally. But
yeah, I had already played Advance Wars when I was younger, And that was like the same style of game, but more of the kind of gameplay of a tactics game that I wanted. I didn't want it to make me feel bad for having units die, because I didn't want to be expected to play every game perfectly and save scumming. And basically, in Advanced Wars, they specifically go out of your way to make you not feel bad by like hiding all of the units, like in especially the enemy units. And the enemy units, you can't see any people in them, so that you don't feel bad about blowing them up. All right, I can't hold back anymore. I need to talk about the Mega Man demo. I need to. I have a fundamental burning in my heart, and I need to talk about this great demo that came out.
That concludes.
It's so.
That concludes.
So good.
That concludes the Spectacular Spider Cast. We're now going on to the Super Fighting Robot Mega Cast.
We're going back to your regularly scheduled programming. Joseph talking about Mega Man. It's so good, you guys. I'm this is making me very excited. The new mechanics flow really well. Like, I always knew that it was going to be okay because they were optional. Because like you can, it's a button that you have to press to activate them. So like in the new Mega Man game, there's this double gear system, and that's sort of like the gimmick of the game. You press the right trigger, you can slow down time for a little bit, and there's like a little bar that like steadily increases. So that's how long you can use it. And if you overuse it, then you can't use the ability for a while. And there's another one that does power. The power is mainly used to power up your special weapons. You can also use it for the Buster, but the Mega Buster, you get just as much power out of it by slowing down time and pressing the button really fast, because you just get more volume of shots in the time. But it flows really well in the gameplay. It's a great way to sort of like take a challenge and like it can try to hit you with a hard challenge, and you can use that so that you can have more time to understand what's happening. And then from that, if you die later in the stage, then when you come back, you probably won't use that, because now you understand. Like, there's a falling block section where, like, the first time I went through it, I was spamming slow motion, like, constantly, because it's all of these falling blocks on conveyor belts. But then once I sort of figured out how everything worked and understood the pattern, every time I went back, I didn't use it, because why would you go slower on purpose if you can do it faster and consistent without dying? So like the ebb and flow of that is really good, because like there's sort of like this idea of like people will take the easiest path provided to them, but it's sort of mitigated by the fact that the easiest path also significantly slows things down. So you're not as incentivized to spam it, because it slows things down if you're trying to move through the game at a reasonable pace. So that was fun. The new weapon selection, where you can take the left stick and just point it in whatever direction the weapon you want. That's really fluid and seamless and really good, because it also has like, there's always been the L and R thing where you can hit the other L and R buttons to like cycle through the weapons that you have. But this is like, if you could, once you memorize everything, it makes like switching between weapons really fluid, and it's really cool. The other thing that I noticed while playing is that they made this subtle thing with the slide, which I really like. I only noticed it because I was messing around in the slow motion. But so like in Mega Man, ever since Mega Man 3, and then if you skip 9 and 10 because they were weird, if you press down and jump, you slide. So your hitbox is half, and you go faster for a little bit. What you can do, first of all, you can jump out of the slide, which is not something that you could do in every Mega Man game. There are some where if you press the A button after you've been sliding, you still won't jump. You have to wait for the full slide to complete. So you can jump out of a slide. The other thing you can do is you can stop sliding. You can, I guess, like, you could do this in Mega Man, in other Mega Man games too, but, like, the way the animation works, like, you slide and then you hold the other direction, and, like, you'll still, like, kind of slide, but then Mega Man will, like, sort of turn around. It's hard to describe, but it like, the animation is really fluid, and it feels really good. Even if you could do that in the other games, like, in the other games, what would happen is you just stop. But, like, it feels like you're moving, like, it feels very fluid of you're sliding in one direction and then you're turning around and walking in the other direction. I don't know. It just feels really good, and it's hard to explain. You have to turn around in a slide in the demo. It's free on the Nintendo Switch, and I think on other platforms too. It came out on the Nintendo Switch first, and then it came out on the other platforms the next day. I think you can get it on PS4 and Xbox. So try it. It's very good. It's very good. But it's coming out October 2nd. I'm really excited about it. You should be excited about it too. Buy it so they make more. That's the end of my story on the demo. I just needed to talk about that. It's very important to me.
Mega Man. Dan, would you like to go on a rant about favorite video game you've played lately?
Well, I mean, haven't really been playing much new stuff lately. I've been going through the Mass Effect series again, but that's just kind of a yearly thing I do. It's not like I gotta play this again. It's just it's my obligatory thing.
Where are you right now in your replay through?
Right now, I've been spending the past 3 days installing and reinstalling 3 because I for some reason keep modding it incorrectly.
What are you trying to mod in?
Well, a bunch of things, but mainly like expanded galaxy mod, which adds like a bunch of new small content to sort of flesh out the world, and a texture mod, which basically makes most of the textures higher resolution. And I installed them in the wrong order, so I had to reinstall the entire game. And then I didn't reinstall everything. I didn't uninstall it correctly somehow, because that's a thing, I guess. And when I tried to reinstall everything, it said, you didn't do that right. So I'm back at square one again.
I have only dabbled in the modding of video games because of this exact situation being my greatest fear.
Honestly, this is the first time it's happened. I've modded Skyrim tons of times and never had any issues.
I mean, most of the time, I understand it's not a rational fear, I want to point out. This is a completely irrational fear. It's not like I'm bad with computers or anything. Pretty much all of my job and school is computers. I just don't for some reason, I just don't trust myself for this sort of thing. And so the most modding I've ever done is like some tiny mods onto Stardew Valley. I don't even really like putting texture packs on Minecraft, to be perfectly honest. But I mean, I've played mod packs of Minecraft, but that's different because they do all the modding for you, and you just hit go, and that's the whole thing. So I don't think that counts.
I think I've only exclusively modded Star Wars games in my time. The first game I modded was OG Battlefront 2. Not the new one.
Nice.
But yeah, I remember the Extreme Pack where you get to play as a bunch of cool new characters and whatnot. And then I modded Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2. Mainly
I do that all the time.
Mainly for compatibility stuff, but I also did a lot of textures and new items and whatnot. But yeah, because I was playing it on Windows Vista, and they were not very compatible with that. So I originally had to download some fan-made patches or mods for it to have it run right. But yeah, those are the only games I've ever modded and successfully done. I tried modding Marvel Ultimate Alliance and I don't think that turned out well. But yeah.
Yeah, see, when I modded KOTOR, I was that kind of person who added gun swords and buster swords from Final Fantasy.
Of course. That's that.
John, have you been playing any games aside from Spider-Man, or has that been pretty much it?
Actually, I haven't been on the podcast in a while, but obviously I got a PS4 recently. So
Oh, yes. I didn't know that you did not have one before.
Yeah.
So yes, that is an update. I think people might have been able to reverse engineer Sherlock Holmes, that sort of situation.
I find deduction, Watson. But yeah, no, I've been playing a lot of PS4 games. I got Rise of the Tomb Raider. I got Mortal Kombat X, Street Fighter V, and the remake of Shadow of the Colossus. All of which I've been playing a lot with my roommates. Having a lot of fun with all of that. I was shocked by how short the story mode was for Mortal Kombat X because I want to get Injustice 2, but right now I want to get the Legendary Edition with all the DLC because of course. But I watched the story mode for Injustice 2 and I was like, oh, probably Mortal Kombat X is the same thing because it's the same studio that made it and whatnot. It is absurdly short. Like when it ended, I thought it was the halfway point of the game. Yeah, so since then, I'm hankering even more for Mortal Kombat 11, which I'm still disappointed was not announced at E3.
Well, you only have to wait, 8 more months until the next E3?
They could announce
and find out.
They could announce it at PlayStation Experience or PAX or whatnot, but I don't know. Still waiting. MK11, let's go, baby.
Dan, we covered the games that you've been playing in recent times, right?
Well, I did. I don't think it's on the site yet, but I did talk about this one Tales game, Tales of Xillia 2. I'm not sure if it's. I wrote about it on the site. I don't think it's been published yet. That's pretty much the only other
what
thing
is that?
I've been
What is
playing.
that game?
And,
Tell us about it. How many tails? Is it like
all right.
Tales from Sonic where there's 2 tails? Is it the 9-tailed fox? What? How many tails? There sounds like tails are pretty important.
All right, sure. Let's pad this out a bit. Sure, why not? All right. So I've always been into JRPGs, Japanese RPGs like Final Fantasy and whatnot. And the Tales series is, in my opinion, kind of better than Final Fantasy. At least over, like, if you take how much I've enjoyed each game. And I played one of them called Tales of Xillia. It's pretty standard as far as those games go. Good characters, good story, and the sequel, it's interesting. You get a new player character who's mute and is basically like a Mary Sue or Gary Stu, whatever the male version of that is. When you first start, you're like, oh, great, it's going to be like, you're going to be the savior of the world, and all the characters from the first game are going to fawn over you and everything.
The chosen one!
Funny thing is, that's exactly what happens, and I loved it. I mean, spoiler alert, but it's actually really cool because the second game adds a social element where you talk to each of the people from the first game, you do side quests with them to flesh out their backstories and what their current stories, and that's something I've always been into as well, because I prioritize characters over story, over gameplay. That's what gets me into games more than anything. That's why I like BioWare games, Mass Effect, Dragon Age, and all that. And that's why I like this game, because it went against the norms, added something new. It's got like an okay rating on Metacritic, and I'm angry at that because I think it deserves better. That's why I wrote about it.
That's a good strategy. I don't know if we get factored into Metacritic.
Yeah, but we don't have to because they're the establishment.
Also, for the record, that the characters in Spider-Man PS4 are also fantastic.
Oh, yes, that's what I hear.
I mean, the Mega Man, in terms of games that I've been playing in recent times, of course, the Mega Man demo I've played over a couple of times. I've been playing Minecraft with my friend, just sort of like, it's just one of those things where we were like we were actually looking at like modded versions of Minecraft to play, and while we were doing research, I looked at just like vanilla Minecraft these days, and I'm like, honestly, there's a lot of stuff in here that I'd never even like seen before. Why don't we just like playing regular Minecraft for us, people who played it back when it came out when we were in middle school before the full release, like that this would probably, I mean, I've played it on and off since then, but there's just been enough stuff added where it's like, this is basically like playing a mod that added stuff. So we've just been playing regular. It's also much easier to set up a server that way. So we've been doing that, and that's been fun. I also started playing Advance Wars 2 again. I got frustrated with one of the levels in the story mode, so I stopped. And now I've come back, but instead of, I'm just playing, there's like challenge missions that are outside of the story mode, and I've been playing those along with like using the custom map feature to like build my own scenarios. And that was fun. So that's sort of what I've been, that's what video games that I've been playing in times that are recent. And since we have all talked about those aforementioned recently played video games, I think it might be time to wrap things up.
Are you asking a question? Because I don't know.
It was not a question. I was just giving people space to speak. It's important to let your other guests, and not guests, the other members, the other people on the podcast, it is important that they get a chance to speak. That is an important rule.
You heard it here, folks. Everyone else on the podcast that's not Joe is officially a guest.
I'm fine with that.
That's not, I don't, it's fine.
I'm sure they'll go over real well with Anna.
Don't worry about it. Thank you for listening to this edition of the GameCola Podcast. If you like what you heard, be sure to check us out on our actual internet website, GameCola.net, where you can read news posts, review articles, other gaming related stuff. You heard us talk about some. Dan's got an article that probably will have come out by the time this podcast goes up. Lots of stuff like that. If you like video content, we also have a YouTube channel, GCDotNet, the letter G, the letter C, the word dot, and the word net, where you can find playthroughs. Right now we've got Valhalla, which you could watch through and see, in preparation for that new released Nirvana game that we were talking about earlier. You can also see Danganronpa, right?
Hopefully soon, yes.
Again, this podcast is going to be coming out a lot later than it is being recorded, so the future. But yeah,
Danganronpa
coming year soon. 2000.
You can check that out, and also hopefully either before or soon after this podcast goes up, Dan's playthrough of Paul's new game, Pizza Delivery Boy Who Saved the World.
Woo! I will be watching that.
Yeah.
So there's that. So you can check that out on the YouTube. Also, tons of other videos and series that have happened over the years that we've had that YouTube channel. You could, if you want to find us on social media, you can do so on Facebook and Twitter. Just search GameCola and you'll find us. If you like this podcast, be sure to tweet us about it using the hashtag the GCPC. That is the podcast hashtag that we came up with fairly recently. If you want to ask us questions through that, you can do that. And it's a good way to also share the podcast with friends. Speaking of questions, we will sometimes take viewer questions on the podcast, so you can do that through Twitter and Facebook, or you can send us an email at podcast@GameCola.net, and we can read your questions on the podcast and use them as discussion topics. In addition, you can also find us on iTunes. If you're a fan of podcasts, I think you might be, since you just listened to an entire podcast. You're probably a fan. And so you can go to iTunes, search GameCola. You can find all of the episodes of the GameCola Podcast. You can also find our RPG cast, where we take video game mechanics and sort of translate them into a tabletop RPG setting. Right now we're doing Secret of Mana with myself, James, Anna, and Jetty is hosting. You can also find older ones where we did Final Fantasy and Crystalis. We also have in the archives the Hacks and Slash, our video game fan fiction podcast, where we read fan fiction of questionable quality and riff on it. If you like these podcasts, share them with your friends. You can also rate us highly on iTunes. Unless you don't like the podcast, then we're not on iTunes. Don't worry about it.
What podcast?
But rating us and leaving a review on iTunes really helps the podcast get spread to people, as well as, just actually spreading it to people. That helps spread it to people. That's called the identity property.
Like my identity as a guest on this podcast.
That's not... I say so many things. Like, it's so clear that I say so many things where it's just like I'm reiterating until I get to the correct thing. You can't just latch on to one of them. You gotta go with whatever I say last. That's the true thing. That's how it works. It's important you know that. Because otherwise, I sound like a real jerk.
You're not a real jerk, just a fake jerk.
It's just I only play a jerk on the internet. So thanks again for listening to this edition of the GameCola Podcast. Have a lovely time of day, wherever it is, whenever it is that you're listening to this. Thanks to Dan for coming on for the first time. It's been great to have you, and we hope to hear you on here in future months.
I hope
John
so too.
John, also thank you for coming, but it's not your first time here, so you don't get as much pomp and circumstance.
You get one clap.
Thank you for coming.
Sh-
You are appreciated.
I'll shoot myself later.
You're a very appreciated guest on this podcast.
Hopefully I'll have more videos up soon also.
We'll see you next month. So goodbye everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
What was it? hold on. I mean, this is this. We also played it on GameCola. I always forget the name of this. Hold on, I'm looking it up right now. I'll remember it as soon as I see it.
This game is not important enough to remember.
I'm just bad at names sometimes, okay?